This is a must-win fight for George Kambosos. Now, when you look at it on the surface, it may not seem like that. Non-pay-per-view event fighting Maxi Hughes in the middle of Oklahoma may seem like there's not all that much on the line. But when you take a little bit closer look, you can see. Think about where Kambosos started 2022. He was on top of the world, man. Came off a huge win defeating Teofimo Lopez, and he had all the belts. Fast forward to today, and he's coming off 2 losses in which he was absolutely dominated, and he needs to get back on the winning track. If he were to not win this fight, man, his stock would take a huge hit. That would not only be 3 consecutive losses, but it would be losing to Maxi Hughes. And I don't mean to take anything from the guy, okay? Maxi Hughes is a solid fighter. He's good. You can tell that the man knows how to fight. When you watch the film on him and you break it down, you can tell he knows what he's doing. He's got educated foot movement, good punch selection. I like the way that he knows how to back up just a little bit at a time, little half steps here and there. It's just enough space to encourage his opponent to punch so that he can get off a good counterpunch. And not only that, when he counterpunches, he knows how to counterpunch in combination. He understands small little movements. He's a good fighter. I have to agree with Kambosos in this one. There's levels to the game, and he's just not on the level that George is on. All right, if I had to classify the guy, I would classify him as a journeyman. And as much as people take that as disrespect, let's think about where he's at in his career and what he's done. Is he a prospect? No. He's far too old for that. Is he a contender? You know, some people may make that claim. They may make that, instead of I'm saying he's a journeyman, they may make the claim that he's a contender, but I would make the argument that Maxi Hughes is never going to win the world championship. He's never going to be the best in the division. And if we know right now today that you're never going to be the best in the division, that you're never going to be a threat to win the belt, then you can't be a contender, because the word contender implies that you're going to contend for the belt one day. You're going to contend to be the best in the world. Is he a gatekeeper? Gatekeeper's reserved for a man who is at the top and he's on his way back down. Or in the rare occasion that somebody's on their way up or they've reached their peak and they just don't quite have what it takes to be a world champion. Now, on the flip side of that, you could make the argument that George Kambosos is a gatekeeper. He was at the top, got knocked off the tippy top by Devin Haney. If you don't believe that he has what it takes to make it back to the top, if you don't think that he can ever win the title again, you can make the argument that he is a gatekeeper, because the only people that are going to be able to beat Kambosos are the people who have what it takes to make it to the very top. And he has the ability to turn everybody else away. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, you talk to George about it. He's going to tell you that he has another world championship in his future. And that's a very real possibility, right? Because let's be honest with each other. As much as he got dominated in those 2 fights with Devin Haney is an elite level fighter. And even in those fights, Kambosos showed that he knows how to fight. I mean, it wasn't just an off night for Teofimo Lopez. George still had to show up. So he comes out there, beats the man who beat the man, then goes into these fights with Haney. Like I mentioned, even though he was dominated, we saw he understands angles. He understands footwork. He has very good feints. You know, the thing that he has going for him the most is his timing. Devin Haney was able to take that away through his length, his jab, and his superior physical ability. George Kambosos was dominated in most ways in that fight, in the sense that he was not as talented as a fighter as Devin Haney is. Look, Devin Haney's just a better fighter, man. He's more talented. He's got a better ring IQ. He's got a better jab, puts his punches better together, blah, 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 blah. Whatever you want to say, he's just a better fighter. On top of that, he's also more physically talented. He's a better athlete. So he's faster. He's quicker. He has better balance. Right, so man, it's going to be tough to overcome both of those things. That's what George Kambosos was going up against. It's just that Devin was better. It's not taking anything away from what Kambosos brings to the table. So when you look at him, you know that you understand he knows footwork, he understands feints, he knows how to work angles. We even saw it in the fight with Haney, even when he wasn't pulling the trigger because he was worried about what was coming back. We saw that he was going through the correct motions and he was putting himself in the correct position, and he just wasn't pulling the trigger on those punches. But if he goes in there with a guy like Maxi Hughes, it's not going to be a problem. He's going to be able to pull the trigger on him. Kambosos is the more talented guy. Kambosos is the better athlete. Kambosos isn't going to be worried about what's coming back because Maxi Hughes doesn't have any kind of significant knockouts. He doesn't have any kind of significant power. He's not going to be worried about those shots. This is a fight, in my opinion, for Kambosos to get back on track. I was really surprised by the odds. He's only going off at about minus 330 on this one. I think there's a lot of value to be had in that line. I think Kambosos is going to come out with the win here. I think he's going to look good. His timing is going to be back on track because he's going to be the faster fighter. He's got the higher ring IQ. He's more talented. I think his feints are going to be able to help him get inside. I think he'll be able to come through over the top with that right hand, and he'll also be able to use it. Hughes is fighting out of that southpaw stance. And that's going to open up the right hand for Kambosos. So I wouldn't be surprised if when it was all said and done, George won on the cards, unanimous decision, 116, 112, right? 8 rounds to 4, something along those lines. I would be a little surprised if either man gets a stoppage. They're not necessarily known for their knockouts, not known for their power. But I do like the work rate that George puts on. I do like the fact that when he comes inside, he knows how to work to the body. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind here is that as good as Hughes has looked in the past, the most wins that he has ever put together consecutively is the current win streak he's on, and it's 7. 7 wins. What level of competition has this man fought that he can't put together more than 7 wins in his career? You need to ask yourself that question. Who's he been sparring with? Who's he been fighting? The level of competition is huge. I've made this analogy in the past because it's so obvious. What if I told you that my record was 1,000-0 with 1,000 knockouts? That would sound unbelievable, but what if it was true? And then you found out I was fighting nothing but 5th graders. That would take away the shine a little bit, wouldn't it? It would take a little bit of the glitz and the glamour away from that. So let me know what you guys think. Am I underestimating what Maxi Hughes is bringing to the table? Do you think that George Kambosos just had his one time to shine, his 15 minutes of fame in the sun when he went out there and defeated Teofimo Lopez, and what we saw against Devin Haney was more in line, and that fighter, the fighter that showed up against Devin Haney, is going to have trouble with Hughes? Let me know what you guys think.